very good
Order.
question.
Question number 3. Order. Number 3, Chris Bishop.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Question to the Minister of Finance. Which sector can he report is mostly driving growth in view of last week's GDP figures, which show the New Zealand economy is the third fastest growing in the OECD?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, thank you for that insightful question. The figures for GDP last week show that it is the private sector driving the majority of growth, with GDP expanding 4% in the year to June on an expenditure basis. By comparison, public sector GDP expanded by 1.7%. This is quite a turnaround from 7 or 8 years ago under the previous government, where, for instance, in the year to 2008, public sector GDP expanded by 4.6% and private sector GDP fell by 0.1%. And the economy had been in recession for all of that year. Mr Speaker, part of the government's focus in economic management is to have a thriving private sector and an effective and stable public sector.
Supplementary question, Chris Bishop.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Finance, what reports has he received showing the growing economy is delivering more jobs for New Zealand households and families?
The Honourable Bill English.
One of the measures of economic progress is whether people can see that there are more jobs and better job opportunities. The ANZ reports that job ads increased for the 7th consecutive month and are now 12% higher than a year ago. ANZ says, and I quote, "That's the sign of a strong labour market." Auckland job ads are up 14%. Wellington job ads are up 11%. Regions are enjoying even stronger growth in job ads. In Waikato, job ads are up 21%. Hawke's Bay, 21%. Manawatu, 16%, and Otago, 15%, all higher than Auckland and Wellington.
Supplementary question, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Minister shirked from admitting what every economist recognises as the biggest driver of our current GDP being mass immigration.
Yeah, that's right.
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, because often, as with that member's assertions on economics, he's simply not right.
Order. Supplementary question, Chris Bishop.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary to the Minister of Finance, how is the growing economy being supported by growth in manufacturing?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I pay some attention to the manufacturing figures because it's a wee while ago since the Labor Party declared the manufacturing crisis. In fact, since they declared that crisis, manufacturing has grown pretty much every quarter, and the so-called crisis continues. The recent Performance of Manufacturing Index shows a reading of 55.1 with readings above 50% indicating growth. The sector has remained in solid expansion in nearly all months since 2012.
Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Chris Bishop.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Finance, how is the growing economy driving increasing consumer and business confidence?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, consumer sentiment, according to the ANZ, lifted in September, the 4th consecutive increase and the highest reading since January. They report a particularly strong lift in the outlook for future economic conditions, with a net 31% believing they'll be better off in 12 months' time. And I would have thought that in the new positive strategy the Labor Party is following, that they would be pleased about that rather than critical.